am the 19th child out of 21 children. Yes, my mother
Ooh,
birthed
Lord.
21 children by my dad. And I know
Ooh.
you ladies and the gentlemen can relate to R. Kelly, his song, There's Nothing Wrong with a Little Bit of Bump and Grind. But it wasn't a little bit of bump and grind. They
It was
was
bump,
bumping and
bump,
grinding
and bump.
all the
Right,
time. So
We.
And they
so
didn't even
there
stop at 19. That's the thing.
look,
so
let me just, what's so funny, Paul, is because I'm thinking to myself, look, I come from a family of 10 and 21. Ooh, child, I could imagine what life was like in your household.
Mm,
you
mm,
know,
mm, mm.
as of today, there are 17 of us living,
Okay.
63 grandchildren and 87 great grandchildren. And I was listening to your ladies talking about, you know, mothers cannot be replaced like fathers can't be replaced. And it's going on 2 years. Next month will be 2 years since my mother had passed away. And for
Oh,
the
sorry to
last
hear.
for the last 2 weeks, I still call my mother's phone,
Yeah.
and I call that number, and I get a disconnection, but I wish I could connect with her one more time, but
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, because as you sound just like me. I remember when my mother passed away. For the first couple of years, I was calling her constantly. So yeah, I truly understand.
Yeah.
Man, that's a hard deal, man.
Yes, 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 yes. But she did. I think that my mom and dad, uh, they weren't perfect, but I think they were the perfect person that God designed for, especially for her to birth 21 children. And it takes a lot of courage, to
Mhm.
have a lot of children, and it takes a lot of faith, that things are going to work out when you have an abundance of children that you are
Mhm.
bringing in this world. Yes, it was some tough time, it was some difficult time, but we managed to get over those difficult times.
Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you mean.
Mm.
That just thinking back, it's this funny thing how when my mom, she would, when it came down to when she would cook, how she could make a meal stretch so far that she was not only stretching it for her kids, but she was also making sure if somebody came by that was hungry, she would make sure she had something for them too. And we used to say, "Why you always do that?" She said, "My mom always taught me if if you cook, make sure you cook enough for somebody in case somebody else come by your house hungry." So she was always thinking about not only her children and her family, but whoever else came by her house.
And that's the way my mother was. She was always thinking ahead,
Mhm.
always stretching the meal out. And that's one thing I learned from my mother is that no matter what happens in life, never give up. Continue to help people, continue to be a humanitarian to the people in the world.
That's right.
Man,
Yeah.
that's a great thing to have. That's a great thought process impart on somebody.
Yeah.
Because the world we living in, that's in
Yeah,
short
everybody's
supply.
selfish right now. It's and self-centered. So many of them are self-centered nowadays and thinking about only themselves. You know, and we were talking about this yesterday of how when um, you would years ago when we were coming up, they used to have the rent parties. And when I saw that on Good Times, I said I remember hearing about people used to say they have rent parties because their neighbor needed to pay their rent.
Yeah.
Back in them days, people were really their brother's keeper. Now, not so much, and we have more now than we had then, and yet we just don't do it.
I think
Yeah.
what happened, um, the generation has changed. I think that a lot of the older generation did not train the younger generation. And so some of the stuff that we learn from mom and dad, uh, it's very difficult to try to teach the young people, the next generation of, about some of those traditions. They don't want to hear it at all.
Yeah.
They just want to ignore it, and they want to make their own legacy. And yes, we are living in a world that people are cynical. They very, very, very cynical, and it's about me. It's not about team, and they think that that it's about them, and they're very selfish. And I think that we'll never accomplish anything when we have a cynical attitude. We all would just basically fall apart. I remember a time I knew my neighbors. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, I knew my neighbors. Mrs. Johnson would see me and I did something wrong. Mrs. Johnson would spank me on my butt and then take me home and tell my mama and daddy. And my mama and daddy would do the same thing, would discipline me. But now you can't say nothing to these kids, because if you do, the mama or the daddy gonna jump on you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's serious. But I had a question for you. I'm so happy to have you on the show. First of all, I want to thank you for coming on our show today. What you said? Ursula had a comment. You want to read the comments, Margaret?
She said, "Yep, we got to pass it on."
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, so are you just that? Do you do? I don't mean it like that, but I want to say, do you just write as an author, or do you do other things besides just writing? I've seen you on a couple of shows recently.
Yeah, I do write. Also, I like to volunteer at Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers and Sisters, the YMCA. I like to deal with at-risk youth in our community, because it's my job to pass it on to the next generation. It's my job to really go out and inspire young men and women, to let them know that the end is better than the beginning. And I share my life story as growing up in a family of 20 siblings, and how it was difficult for us. But I
Mhm.
kept my vision, I kept my faith, I kept a positive attitude, and I was determined to become a successful man and be an advocate in the community. So in 2012, I became the first in my family to graduate from college. So what inspired me to graduate from college is looking at my father's lineage and looking at my mother's lineage. And I discovered that no one on my father's side or my mother's side graduated from college. So that really motivated me to lay the foundation and be the first. There's nothing wrong with being the first. So I became the first to graduate from Upper Iowa University, where I have my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. Since I laid the foundation, I want to tell other young men and women that they can become the first in their family. So when I graduated, a lot of my nieces and nephews started to go back to college, and they received their degrees. And I'm very pleased that they had received their degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. I have a nephew right now who is working on his PhD. But my job was to lay the foundation. And that's what I'm doing for this generation. It's laying the foundation.
That's right. Ursula said, "Congratulations."
Oh yeah.
Thank
Big
you.
congratulations to you, brother.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
congratulations.
I give you big
That's
ups
a
for that.
milestones.
Yeah,
That is.
yeah.
I have a question. How do you communicate your struggles and your successes to young people in this generation, that automatically, because some of them are automatically don't believe that they can do better, especially those young men to be on the corner hanging out, and they want to sell drugs, they want to do this, they want to, and then you try to tell them, you can do better than this, your life can be better than this. How do you get through it, or have you come in contact with any that you have been able to get through, and that you saw the finishing product afterwards?
I think sharing my story and not only my story, but other people's story. And I